What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast with me, your host, Thomas Carney. This is the September recap episode where I'm going over a couple of episodes from this past month, giving you a little bit more life updates, health updates, and drop a little bit of some exciting news about the Pursuit of Calling brand. So definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll see you in there. What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. And I guess you already heard me say that because I also record the intro, but it's okay. So, sorry. Sorry about my voice. Sorry if I cough. I am going through a little bit of a cold, so you're going to have to forgive me for that. But let's dive into the episode. This is the September recap. So if you've been listening to the episodes throughout the month, this will just be a recap for you. If you haven't listened to some of the episodes this month, this will just be some information to maybe help you know what was talked about this month, and so you can go back to those episodes and, see what they were about. So I'm going to cover 2 of the 3 episodes that happened this month. One of my favorite ones was the first one from the month, was with Dawn Marasco. She's definitely one of my favorite guests I've had on the show. And in her episode, we talked about her story, starting from her early childhood all the way to where she is now. She, initially she didn't think there was anything for her. She didn't think there was anything for her to do. She didn't think she had a purpose for the longest time. She later found out that the calling on her life was to guide other women through the pain she had previously experienced. She lost her fiancé, who was murdered directly in front of her, which is insane. And I don't think any of us can actually understand what that is, how that would affect a human being. And it goes to show that, though, that literally anything can be used. God can literally use anything as fuel for the calling that we have on our lives. And, if you feel, maybe you feel like you don't have a purpose. Maybe you feel like there's no purpose on your life and that you can't imagine anybody listening to you. Maybe you don't think you have anything to say and that nobody would want to hear what you have to say, even if you did have to think you had something to say. So in this episode, I implore you to listen to this episode because Dawn really dives into why that doesn't make any sense. Why you have a calling on your life. Well, I'll say not that it doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense why you would feel like that, but it also isn't true. If that makes sense. She said whenever she heard from God that she was going to be a writer and a speaker one day, she said, "Yeah, right, God. Don't you know who I am, what I've done? Who would listen to me? What could I possibly write about? Who's going to care?" And then she saw how all the things she went through are now being used and being applied to who she was created to be. You can use that as an encouragement. That no matter your past or current circumstances, there is a plan and calling for you. I said on the previous episode how we all are given a particular set of tools that help a particular set of people in ways that nobody else can. And I really feel like Dawn touched on this really, really well. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to it. It's definitely one of my favorites. And I think it will be one of yours too, because I honestly feel like it can change your life. Or her story can change your life, I should say. So the next episode I want to talk about was focusing on trials, endurance, character to hope. And it was specifically around Romans 5, 3-4. where Paul wrote about how our trials produce endurance, our endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And the particular kind of character I'm talking about is good character. This good, righteous character that can only come through the process of trials, endurance, character, and hope. And I talked about how I don't believe that you can properly pursue your calling without actually having a good character. Like I also touched on how your past circumstances form who you are today, and your current circumstances will determine who you are tomorrow. It sounds like you don't have a choice, but really you do. You have the choice of what kind of change, what kind of growth you're going to experience. You get to decide whether your past circumstances, those past trials that you've had to endure, are going to have a positive or a negative result on the character that you are going to possess. Because you could be in a circumstance right now, and you have to decide right now how that's going to play its part in your character later down the road. And to add a little bit more context to that, I'm actually going to touch on something I wasn't planning on touching on till later in my notes. But so yesterday morning, I was laying on my couch. I had a massive migraine for over, I don't know, it was probably about 24 hours. I had this migraine. I'm probably more like 12, 16 hours. Doesn't really matter. I had this pretty terrible migraine, and I was laying on the couch. I was just wallowing in self-pity and man, I'm gonna have to lay here all day. I was suffering through a trial, and I wasn't enduring well. I was also listening to podcasts though at the same time, because I didn't feel like I could sit there and do nothing. I had to do something that can at least be perceived to be productive. And for me, listening to podcasts helped me grow and help me learn new things, especially in this particular circumstance. So Ed Milet's podcast came on, and where he was particularly talking about how pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. I can do a whole episode on that maybe one day. But I was laying there on the couch, and I was like, dang it. You got to be joking. I was like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Because I was laying on the couch thinking that's where I was going to be all day, because I didn't feel like I could do anything else. And then here's Ed essentially talking directly to me, saying that, Thomas, you're in pain right now, and that's fine. That's going to happen. Pain is inevitable, but suffering right now, you're suffering, and that's your choice. And I get there's plenty of circumstances where people could take that and say, take that in a very negative light, but take this for what it is. Please just try to take it for what it is, because when you say suffering is a choice, really what it is you're choosing a negative outlook on life versus a positive one. And even if you're in a bad circumstance. So that's what I'm talking about whenever I was talking about having a good character, because in that moment I wasn't exemplifying a good character. And because and that's personal to me, I'll call myself out all day. And the good character that I then produced, that was then produced in me, was one of no, not just because I'm in this bad circumstance does not mean I have to live. Does not mean I have to allow that to produce a negative outlook, a negative mindset in me. That's my choice. That was my choice. And I got up, I started walking around, and it's kind of nuts. My headache zapped right out of my head. And it was kind of crazy how quickly it disappeared once I decided to get up off my butt. And I'm sure there's a whole scientific thing behind that, why that happened. But I also know I'm just going to, I apply that to God, and God was talking directly to me, telling Thomas, get off your butt. And I got off my butt and my headache went away. So I don't know, I apply that to the Lord. But, and so that's all, with all that to say, maybe haven't gone through anything exceptionally hard, but like the same still applies. Your circumstances, good or bad, are used to determine who you are. It's used to determine who you will be tomorrow, and it's up to you to decide how that's going to play out. And that's even to say, like, you might have, maybe you've experienced a migraine before. It's the same logic applies there. Now, I know, like, you might think whenever you think of a trial, you might think of this long, drawn-out process. But really, a trial can be 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes of properly enduring this trial allows you to endure better the next time you go through that, because you can remember, because your body remembers, your mind remembers that you have already endured more and you've endured well before. That's your character being produced. And now the hope that's produced from that, I'm pretty much just talking about this whole episode right now, but that character that's produced from that, the hope that's produced from that good character is hope in a good future. That is hope in a better outcome. It's knowing that just because of your circumstances, you can have hope that your circumstances do not determine who you are. Just because your circumstances suck does not mean your life sucks. So get off your butt. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely go listen to that episode, because I dive way more into it, and that's something I'm really passionate about. So it'd be great if you just give it a little listen, went back, and even took some notes and told me what you thought about that episode. You know, you can leave a comment on Spotify, on YouTube, or maybe on Apple Podcasts. I think you can leave a review on there. So, okay, so next, as all the monthly updates go, I got some life updates. Well, more of my life updates kind of go into my health. So really what I'm going to talk about here is some cool things that are happening with the Pursuit of Calling brand. And I say brand because I'm actually getting really excited to really continue to pursue my calling. Right now Nathan Mavrich generously offered to, for free, help me out with my website, with a website. And so it's going to be pursuitofcalling.com, one word. And on that website, there's going to be a homepage, there's going to be a home and about, and there's going to be a link to all the episodes. But more importantly, on that homepage, there's going to be an email text box for you to be able to put your email in, so you can receive other free content from me that you can only receive from being part of my email list. Now, these things what those new free things will be are going to change over time, and it's going to just continue to get better as time goes on. So I highly encourage you to get into it from the ground up, because I'm just really excited to be able to provide more value to those I've been called to serve. So whenever that website officially drops, I'll let you guys know, probably on Instagram. So even go ahead and follow me on Instagram so you don't miss that either. So let's dive into my health updates. Yay! So my health updates. I've had some crazy things happen in my health. Right, actually, more recently, I stopped I don't know if you knew this. I was on an antidepressant medication. No, I wasn't. Not because of depression, but because of the neurological pain that my dystonia, I don't like saying my dystonia, by the way. I just like saying that the dystonia that I have, because I don't want ownership over the dystonia, but that's a whole different topic. So that the pain that the dystonia produces is neurological pain, and antidepressants have shown benefit in that respect to reducing the pain. But for me, it caused a lot of GI problems. So after about a month, my doctor decided to help me get off, to tell me to get off the medication after I told them what was going on. And I went off the medication, and I went through some withdrawal, which is insane because I was on the lowest dose, and it was terrible. And that was like the hit migraine I was talking about yesterday, I'm pretty sure was a result of that. And guys, you don't want to go through withdrawal. It sucks. But again, just because my circumstances suck does not mean my life sucks. I'm still here. I'm still going. And that was temporary. So another exciting thing is that on September 23rd, the day before this episode drops, I'm going to be going to the Cleveland Clinic, where I'm just getting another opinion on my condition, and I'm going to get to talk to a different neurologist, where the Cleveland Clinic is world renowned for so many different things, especially for their research into movement disorders. So I'm actually pretty excited to go out there. And it's the furthest I've been from home in a really, 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 really long time. Sorry, that was a lot of release. But I've been away from home in a really long time, and to that extent. So I'm actually pretty excited to go for this ride with my dad. So any prayers, all prayers are appreciated. And yeah, so let's dive into the last part of this episode, which is how I've grown in the last month. So I've kind of already mentioned it. What I was going to talk about was what I talked about with Ed Milet and how Ed Milet's podcast, and how I got off my butt and realized, and it was just that was just a application to what I talk about on this podcast. Is just because my circumstances suck does not mean my life sucks, and I still have a calling in my life that I can't just sit back and ignore just because I'm in pain. It might sound like I'm being pretty hard. It might sound like I'm being harsh on myself. Well, I mean, maybe I am, but I don't really see in that instance. I don't really think there's an issue with that. I think if you have a calling, if you believe you have a calling on your life, you have to push yourself. There's going to be instances where you have to push yourself past a limit that you believe that you have, because we're all capable of doing way more than we believe that we can do. So that's how I've grown this last month. I mean, there's other ways I've grown, but that's the one that was most recent and most fresh on my mind. Guys, I want to thank you, though, for listening to this whole episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. If you like this episode, give it a like on YouTube. Give this a like on YouTube. Give me a follow on Spotify. Sorry, I had to remember the names. On Spotify, give it a 5-star review. That is greatly appreciated, because that helps out the algorithm, helps other people know that it's good, that this podcast is any good. And yeah, if you guys could also, just let me know, how you're feeling about this podcast. You should shoot me a message on Instagram, shoot me a text if you have my number. That'd be greatly appreciated. All right, guys, I will see you next time.